Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What If. So in this video, we will see what if Ben 10 never found the Omnitrix. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Road Not Taken. The summer night buzzed with cicadas as 10-year-old Ben Tennyson stared up at the stars from the roof of the rust bucket. Grandpa Max had parked their RV in some backwoods campsite miles from civilization, exactly the kind of boring place that had made this entire summer vacation a total drag. "Hey doofus, dinner's ready," Gwen called from below, her voice cutting through his thoughts. "Grandpa made some kind of stew that smells like Jim's socks, so good luck." Ben rolled his eyes. 3 weeks stuck in an RV with his annoying cousin and no video games was practically torture. "Coming," he grumbled, sliding down from the roof and landing with a practiced hop. Little did Ben know that several miles away, a small pod was streaking through the atmosphere, carrying a device that would have changed his life forever. The Omnitrix, the most powerful piece of technology in the universe, crashed into the forest with a distant boom that barely registered as thunder to the Tennyson family. Inside the RV, Grandpa Max looked up momentarily, a flicker of recognition crossing his weathered face before he dismissed it and returned to stirring his mysterious concoction. "Did you hear that?" Ben asked, pausing with his spoon midway to his mouth. "Just thunder," Max replied casually, too casually. "Finish your dinner, sport. Tomorrow we're headed to the lake for some good old-fashioned fishing." Ben groaned dramatically. "Can't we go somewhere cool? Like a water park or an arcade or literally anywhere that isn't trees and bugs?" "The great outdoors builds character," Max insisted with that knowing smile that always made Ben feel like his grandfather was in on some joke no one else understood. That night, as Ben tossed and turned in his bunk, the Omnitrix sat undisturbed in its crater, its green glow slowly fading as it waited for a wielder that would never come. 7 years passed. Tennyson. Head in the game. Ben snapped back to reality as the baseball whizzed past him, missing his bat by miles. Strike 3. "Sorry, coach," he muttered, jogging back to the dugout where his teammates avoided eye contact. Senior year was supposed to be awesome, but lately, he couldn't shake this weird feeling that something important was missing from his life. "Nice job, Tennyson," Cash Johnson sneered. "That's the championship game down the drain." Ben ignored him, grabbing his backpack and heading for the parking lot without bothering to change. The old junker his parents had bought him for his 16th birthday coughed to life after 3 tries. Bellwood High School shrank in his rearview mirror, unremarkable and ordinary, just like his life had always been. His phone buzzed with a text from Gwen, "Dinner at Grandpa's tonight. He says it's important. Don't be late." Ben frowned. Grandpa Max's important dinners usually involved some bizarre food experiment and reminiscing about his plumbing days. Still, it beat another night of homework and video games. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Ben pulled up to his grandfather's house, a modest single-story place with a suspiciously large garage and shed out back. He'd always wondered why a retired plumber needed so much workspace, but Max deflected questions about his hobbies with practiced ease. Gwen's car was already in the driveway. His cousin had graduated early and was blazing through college with a double major. Meanwhile, Ben was barely maintaining a C average and had no clue what to do after high school. The gap between them had only widened over the years. "Look who finally showed up," Gwen called from the porch, her red hair pulled back in a ponytail. Despite her teasing tone, she looked tense. "What's with the emergency dinner?" Ben asked, following her. "Inside. Grandpa trying out mealworm casserole again." "I wish," she muttered. "He's being weird. Like, weirder than usual." The inside of Max's house smelled surprisingly normal, no exotic spices or questionable protein sources. Instead, Max stood in the kitchen looking uncharacteristically serious, his usual Hawaiian shirt replaced with a plain blue button-up. "Ben, Gwen. Sit down," he said, gesturing to the dining table. There's something I should have told you both a long time ago. Ben exchanged a glance with Gwen. Are you okay, Grandpa? You're not sick or something? Max smiled faintly. No, nothing like that. But after what happened downtown today, I can't keep you in the dark any longer. Downtown? Ben asked. What happened downtown? Max picked up a remote and turned on the small TV in the corner. The local news showed chaotic footage of what looked like a small explosion at the mall, with panicked shoppers running in all directions. The reporter was calling it a gas leak, but the camera briefly caught something that made Ben's blood run cold, a shadowy figure that definitely wasn't human darting into an alley. That's not a gas leak, Ben said slowly. No, Max agreed, turning off the TV. It's not. For the next 20 minutes, Max Tennyson told his grandchildren a story so bizarre that Ben would have laughed if his grandfather's expression hadn't been so deadly serious. Tales of an organization called the Plumbers, not actual plumbers, but a secret force protecting Earth from alien threats. Max had been one of their top agents before retiring to raise his family. So all those plumbing conventions. Gwen began. Some were real. Many weren't, Max admitted. Ben shook his head. No way. Aliens? Secret organizations? This is crazy, Grandpa. Is it? Max reached into his pocket and placed a small device on the table. It looked like a badge with an unusual symbol. When he pressed it, a holographic display sprang to life, showing star charts and alien writing. Holy crap, Ben whispered. The incident today wasn't isolated, Max continued. Something's happening. Incursions are increasing. I've been monitoring the situation, and I can't ignore it anymore. He looked at them both with an intensity Ben had never seen before. And neither can you two. Us? Gwen asked. What can we do against aliens? Max smiled. More than you might think. The truth is, our family has always been special. There's a reason I took you both on that summer road trip 7 years ago. You mean beyond torturing us with campfire stories and squid eyeball stew? Ben quipped, trying to process everything. Max chuckled. I was keeping an eye on you both, watching for signs. Gwen, you've already shown indications of what makes you special. Gwen shifted uncomfortably. You mean the incidents? I thought I was going crazy. Wait, what incidents? Ben asked, looking between them. Gwen hesitated, then raised her hand. Pink energy suddenly danced across her fingertips, forming into a small glowing sphere that illuminated her face with an otherworldly light. Ben nearly fell out of his chair. What the, how long have you been able to do that? A couple years, she admitted. It started small, moving pencils without touching them, knowing things before they happened. Grandpa's been helping me understand it. Your grandmother was Anodite, Max explained. A species of energy beings. Their abilities sometimes manifest in their descendants. Ben stared at his own hands. So I could do that too. The look that passed between Max and Gwen made his stomach sink. We don't think so, Ben, Max said gently. You seem to have inherited different qualities from our family line. Great, Ben muttered. Gwen gets superpowers, and I get, what exactly? Intelligence, adaptability, instinct, Max replied immediately. Don't sell yourself short, Ben. There are many ways to be special. Before Ben could respond, a piercing alarm sounded from somewhere in the house. Max jumped up with surprising agility for a man his age and rushed to a bookshelf, pulling a hidden lever that caused the entire wall to slide away, revealing a high-tech command center filled with monitors and equipment. Whoa, Ben breathed, following Max with Gwen close behind. Another incursion, Max said grimly, studying a map of Bellwood where a red dot pulsed ominously. And this one's bigger. He turned to them both. I need your help. To do what? Ben asked, excitement and fear battling in his chest. To save our town, Max replied, opening a cabinet to reveal an assortment of strange-looking weapons and devices. It's time you learned what the Tennyson family is really about. 30 minutes later, Ben was crouched behind a dumpster outside the Bellwood water treatment plant, wondering how his life had taken such a dramatic turn. The weight of the alien blaster in his hands felt both wrong and weirdly right. Remember, this is just reconnaissance, Max's voice crackled through the communicator in his ear. Do not engage. Yeah, got it, Ben whispered back, peering around the corner. The facility's chain-link fence had been torn open like tissue paper. Inside, strange lights flickered through the windows of the main building. Whatever was in there, it definitely wasn't the maintenance crew. I'm in position, Gwen's voice came through the comm. She was covering the back exit, her newly revealed powers giving her a significant advantage if things went sideways. Ben took a deep breath and darted across the open space to the building, pressing his back against the wall beside a grimy window. Slowly, he raised his head to peer inside. What he saw made his blood freeze. 3 creatures moved through the water treatment control room. They looked vaguely humanoid but with scaly red skin and 4 arms each. Their elongated heads housed multiple yellow eyes that swiveled independently, scanning the equipment as they methodically attached small devices to various control panels. Grandpa, Ben whispered into his comm, we've got 3 hostiles. They're planting something on the water controls. Tetramans, Max responded, tension evident in his voice. Tough customers. Those devices are probably molecular destabilizers, they'll contaminate the entire water supply. So what's the plan? Ben asked, ducking back down as one of the aliens looked toward the window. Hold tight. I'm 5 minutes out with proper containment equipment. A sudden crash from inside made Ben flinch. He risked another glance and saw one of the Tetramans had smashed a control panel in frustration. We don't have 5 minutes, Ben said, watching as the alien reached for a larger device strapped to its back. They're moving to some kind of backup plan. Ben, do not engage. Max ordered. Those are Tetramans, they have the strength of 10 men each. Ben watched as the aliens connected the larger device to the main water output valve. A timer began counting down from 3 minutes. Sorry Grandpa, Ben muttered, switching his communicator off. Gwen, they've got some kind of bomb. I'm going in. Create a distraction at the back door. Ben, wait, Gwen started, but Ben was already moving. He counted silently in his head. When he reached 30, a bright flash of pink light erupted from the back of the building, followed by an alarm. 2 of the Tetramans immediately rushed toward the disturbance, leaving just one by the device. Ben took a deep breath, aimed his blaster at the window, and fired. The glass shattered inward, and without hesitation, he vaulted through the opening, rolling to his feet inside the control room. The remaining Tetraman spun around, all 4 arms reaching for weapons. Human, it growled in a surprisingly understandable accent. This doesn't concern your species. It's my town's water supply, so yeah, it kinda does, Ben replied, diving behind a console as the alien fired some kind of energy weapon that scorched the wall where he'd been standing. The timer now showed 2:30 and counting. Ben needed a plan fast. He glanced around the control room, taking in the layout, the equipment, the pipes running along the ceiling. An idea formed, risky, probably stupid, but better than nothing. You've chosen a poor day to play hero, the Tetraman called out, stalking closer to Ben's hiding spot. The contamination sequence cannot be stopped. Who said anything about stopping it? Ben shouted back, then fired 3 rapid shots at the ceiling. The blaster bolts hit the sprinkler system, triggering it immediately. Water rained down across the entire control room, soaking everything, including the alien device. The Tetraman roared in anger, firing wildly as Ben darted between consoles, making his way closer to the bomb. The alien technology sparked and sizzled as water leaked into its components. No, the Tetraman shouted, rushing toward the device. That was exactly what Ben had been counting on. As the alien focused on protecting its technology, Ben snatched a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it with all his might, connecting solidly with the back of the Tetraman's head. The creature stumbled but didn't fall. That was unwise, it growled, turning all four arms toward Ben. Yeah, I get that a lot, Ben replied, backing away. He hadn't expected the hit to take the alien down, but he needed to keep it away from the device long enough for the water to do its work. The Tetraman lunged forward with surprising speed. Ben ducked under two of its arms but couldn't avoid the third, which caught him with a glancing blow that sent him sprawling across the wet floor. Pain exploded across his ribs as he slid into a metal cabinet. The alien advanced, drawing what looked like a serrated knife from its belt. The timer on the device now showed 1:45, but the display was flickering erratically. The water was working, but too slowly. Ben glanced around desperately and spotted the main electrical panel for the room. It was a terrible idea, but he was short on good ones. Hey, four arms, he called out, struggling to his feet. I bet you can't hit me with that knife from there. Your aim looks as bad as your complexion. The Tetraman snarled and hurled the blade with deadly accuracy. Ben dove to the side, the knife missing him by inches and embedding itself in the wall, right next to the electrical panel. Perfect. Ben fired his blaster at the knife, the energy bolt conducting through the metal and into the electrical panel. Sparks exploded outward as the entire room's power system overloaded. The effect was immediate. Every piece of equipment in the control room surged with electricity, including the alien device, which began smoking and vibrating violently. No, the Tetraman shouted, rushing toward it. Ben dove behind a concrete support column just as the device exploded with a blinding flash. The blast knocked him back against the wall, ears ringing. When his vision cleared, the alien was sprawled unconscious on the floor, and the device was a melted mess of twisted metal. Ben! Gwen's voice called as she rushed into the room, hands glowing with pink energy. Are you okay? Never better, Ben groaned, wincing as he touched his ribs. The other two? Grandpa showed up with some kind of sonic weapon. They're down. She surveyed the destruction. What did you do? Ben managed a pained smile. Improvised. Max appeared in the doorway, a serious-looking weapon in his hands and an even more serious expression on his face. When he saw the unconscious Tetraman and destroyed device, his expression shifted from anger to reluctant approval. I told you not to engage, he said, helping Ben to his feet. The bomb had a timer, Ben replied. Couldn't wait. Max examined the melted remains of the device. You shorted it out. Water plus electricity. Basic science, Ben shrugged, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through his side. Max studied Ben with new eyes. That was extremely dangerous. But it worked, Ben pointed out. Yes, Max admitted. It did. He placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. You're definitely a Tennyson. Despite the pain and confusion of the past few hours, Ben felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose, like he'd finally found the missing piece he'd been looking for. So what happens now? He asked as Gwen helped him toward the exit. Now, Max said, activating some kind of containment field around the unconscious alien, your real education begins. The next few days passed in a blur of revelations and training. Max's house, it turned out, sat atop an extensive underground facility, a former plumber base he'd maintained in secret for years. Here, Ben and Gwen began crash courses in alien species identification, basic combat techniques, and how to use various plumber technologies. For Ben, who had spent years feeling ordinary next to his exceptional cousin, the most surprising discovery was how quickly he took to strategy and tactical planning. Where Gwen approached problems with methodical analysis, Ben had an instinctive grasp of adaptive thinking that even Max found impressive. It's like your brain is wired for improvisation, Max commented after Ben had successfully navigated a holographic combat scenario by using the environment in unexpected ways. I just see the connections, Ben explained, unable to articulate exactly how his mind worked in those situations. It wasn't something he could teach, he simply looked at what was available and instantly understood how the pieces could fit together. Gwen, meanwhile, was advancing rapidly with her energy manipulation abilities. The cousins often trained together, Ben devising unorthodox strategies that Gwen would execute with her growing powers. One evening, as they sat recovering from a particularly intense session, Gwen gave Ben a curious look. "Do you ever wonder why you didn't inherit any anodite abilities?" she asked. Ben shrugged. "Maybe I got Grandpa's genes instead of Grandma's. Besides, someone's gotta be the normal one." Gwen snorted. "Normal is not how I'd describe your brain, Ben. The way you took down that combat sim today was seriously twisted, in a good way." "I'll take that as a compliment," Ben replied with a grin. Their banter was interrupted by an alert from the command center. Max's face appeared on a nearby screen. "Kids, we've got a situation downtown. Another incursion, but this one's different. I need you both at the old warehouse district in 20 minutes. Ben and Gwen exchanged looks. Despite only a few days of training, they were being called into action. "We'll be there," Ben promised, already mentally cataloging what equipment they might need. The warehouse district was eerily quiet as Ben crouched behind a stack of shipping containers. Gwen was positioned on a rooftop across the street, her pink energy signature barely visible against the night sky. "I've got movement at the east entrance," Max's voice said through their communicators. He was monitoring from a plumber van parked 2 blocks away, tracking energy signatures and coordinating their efforts. "I see it," Ben confirmed, adjusting the alien tech binoculars Max had given him. The thermal imaging showed a humanoid figure slipping through a side door of the largest warehouse. "Just one target?" "That's what's strange," Max replied. "The energy signature is massive, but it's contained in a single entity." "I don't like this," Gwen chimed in. "It feels like a trap." "Agreed," Max said. "Ben, hold position. Gwen, circle around to the loading bay for backup. I'll approach from the west." "Copy that," Ben replied, settling into wait. 5 minutes passed with no further movement. Then, without warning, the entire warehouse lit up from within, a strange blue glow emanating from every window and crack in the walls. "Energy spike." Max called urgently. "Everyone, fall back." Before Ben could move, the warehouse roof exploded upward in a column of blue fire. A figure rose from the destruction, hovering 20 feet above the ground, surrounded by crackling energy that illuminated the entire block. "Holy!" Ben whispered, staring up at what appeared to be a teenage boy not much older than himself, suspended in midair. The stranger was dressed in black and blue armor that seemed to pulse with the same energy that surrounded him. "Attention, humans," the figure called out, his voice unnaturally amplified. "I am Ian, master of the Cronian race, and soon to be ruler of this pathetic planet." "Cronian?" Ben muttered into his calm, "Grandpa, what's a Cronian?" "Time manipulators," Max replied tensely. "Extremely dangerous. Do not engage." Too late. A blast of pink energy shot from Gwen's position toward the floating figure. Ian merely raised a hand, and the energy slowed to a crawl midair before dissipating completely. "Ah, an anodite hybrid," Ian said, turning toward Gwen's location. "How interesting. Your energy will be particularly useful." Ben watched in horror as Ian gestured toward the building where Gwen was positioned. The entire structure began to age rapidly, concrete crumbling and metal rusting before his eyes. "Gwen!" Ben shouted, breaking cover and racing toward her position as the rooftop began collapsing beneath her feet. Pink energy platforms materialized in the air as Gwen leaped from the disintegrating building, but Ian waved his hand again. The platforms shimmered and vanished, and Gwen began to fall. Without hesitation, Ben calculated trajectory and speed, sprinting to intercept her fall. He launched himself forward in a diving tackle, catching Gwen midair and rolling to absorb the impact. They tumbled across the asphalt, coming to rest behind a dumpster as debris rained down around them. "Nice catch," Gwen gasped, wincing as she touched a bleeding cut on her forehead. "Gymnastics finally paid off," Ben replied, checking that his blaster was still intact. "What's this guy's deal?" "He's draining temporal energy," Max's voice came through their comms. "That warehouse contained an experimental particle accelerator. He's using it to power something big." Above them, Ian raised both hands, and the blue energy surrounding him expanded outward in a dome that encompassed several city blocks. At last, his voice boomed. "The Cronin field is stabilized. Now to find what I came for." "And what exactly did you come for?" Max called out, stepping into the open with a large weapon aimed at the hovering figure. Ian turned slowly, a smile spreading across his face. "Maxwell Tennyson. The legendary plumber. I was hoping you'd show yourself." He descended slightly, the energy around him pulsing brighter. "I came for the Omnitrix, of course. My sensors detected its arrival on this miserable planet 7 years ago." "The Omnitrix?" Max's voice betrayed genuine surprise. "It's not here. It never arrived." Ian's expression darkened. "You lie. My technology cannot be wrong. The Omnitrix crashed near Bellwood. Its energy signature is unmistakable." Ben and Gwen exchanged confused glances. Whatever the Omnitrix was, it clearly held immense importance. "If it did arrive," Max said carefully, "it was never found. Not by me, not by anyone I know." Ian hovered in place, considering this information. "Then I shall simply have to tear this city apart until I find it." He raised a hand toward a nearby apartment building. "Starting now." "No." Ben shouted, stepping out from cover and firing his blaster directly at Ian. The energy bolt froze midair, just as Gwen's attack had. Ian turned to face Ben, his expression shifting from anger to curious interest. "Another Tennyson," he said, studying Ben intensely. "How strange. In my timeline, you are quite different." "Yeah. How so?" Ben asked, trying to keep Ian's attention while Max circled behind him. "In many realities, you wield the Omnitrix," Ian replied, descending until he hovered just 10 feet above Ben. "You become a hero of sorts, with access to alien DNA and transformative powers. Yet here, you're merely human." He cocked his head. "A cosmic joke, perhaps." Something about Ian's words struck a chord in Ben, explaining the emptiness he'd felt for years, like his destiny had been diverted somehow. But he pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the immediate threat. "Maybe I like being human," Ben replied, subtly reaching for a second device in his pocket, an EMP generator Max had given him for emergencies. "A pity you won't be one for long," Ian said, raising his hand toward Ben. "I'll aid you to dust and continue my search." As blue energy gathered around Ian's hand, Max fired his weapon from behind. A pulse of yellow energy struck Ian's back, causing him to stagger midair. "Now, Ben!" Max shouted. Ben activated the EMP and hurled it upward. The device exploded in a shower of sparks directly beneath Ian, disrupting the energy field surrounding him. The Cronian faltered, dropping several feet before regaining control. "Gwen!" Ben called out, pointing to the damaged particle accelerator visible through the destroyed warehouse roof. Understanding immediately, Gwen channeled pink energy through her hands, focusing on the machinery. With a tremendous effort, she tore the accelerator from its moorings and flung it skyward, directly at Ian. The Cronian raised his hands to stop it, but without his full energy field, he couldn't completely halt its momentum. The massive piece of equipment slammed into him, carrying him backward through the air. Ben was already running, calculating angles in his head. He leaped onto a dumpster, then to a fire escape, scaling it rapidly as Ian struggled with the accelerator. Reaching the rooftop, Ben positioned himself directly above the Cronian's projected path. As Ian finally pushed the accelerator away, Ben jumped, plummeting through the air with Max's blaster reconfigured to its highest setting. He crashed into the hovering alien, wrapping his arms and legs around him as they tumbled through the air. "Get off me, human!" Ian snarled, trying to dislodge Ben as they fell. "Not a chance," Ben replied, pressing the blaster directly against the glowing emblem on Ian's chest, the apparent source of his power. He pulled the trigger. The blast discharged point-blank into the emblem. A blinding flash of blue and white light erupted between them as Ben was thrown clear, plummeting toward the ground. Pink energy enveloped him moments before impact, Gwen's powers gently lowering him to the street. Nearby, Ian crashed into a parked car, his armor smoking and power visibly diminished. "Did we get him?" Ben gasped, struggling to his feet. Ian rose from the wreckage, his energy field flickering erratically. "This changes nothing," he growled. "I will find the Omnitrix. And when I return, you'll wish you died here tonight." Before anyone could respond, Ian raised a hand and tore what looked like a hole in the air itself, a swirling vortex of blue energy. He stumbled through it, and the portal closed behind him with a thunderclap of displaced air. Silence fell over the destruction-strewn street. "Okay, that was intense," Ben finally said, wincing as he catalogued his injuries: bruised ribs, again, cut forehead, possibly sprained wrist. Max approached, his expression grave. "It's worse than I thought. If the Cronians are involved, this goes beyond simple incursions." "What's this Omnitrix thing he was looking for?" Gwen asked, helping Ben stay upright. Max hesitated, then sighed. "It's the most powerful device in the universe, a watch-like alien technology that contains DNA samples from thousands of species. Its wielder can transform into any of those aliens, gaining their abilities and powers." Ben felt a strange sense of déjà vu, and this guy thinks it landed in Bellwood? 7 years ago. "During our summer road trip," Max confirmed. "I had suspicions at the time. There was a meteorite that night, but when I investigated the next day, I found nothing. I assumed it had been a false alarm." "So this Omnitrix could be anywhere?" Gwen asked. "Or someone already found it," Ben suggested. Max nodded grimly. "Either way, Ian will be back. And next time, he won't underestimate us." He placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. "That was quick thinking up there. Reckless, but effective." Ben managed a tired smile. "Just improvising." As they made their way back to Max's van, Ben couldn't help but wonder about Ian's words. In other realities, he was the wielder of the most powerful device in the universe. In this one, he was just Ben Tennyson, an ordinary teenager with decent grades and no clear future. Yet somehow, he'd just helped take down a time-manipulating alien with nothing but human ingenuity and courage. Maybe being just human wasn't so bad after all. Over the next few weeks, Ben's life settled into a bizarre new routine. By day, he attended high school, made excuses to friends about his increasingly frequent absences, and tried to maintain the appearance of normality. By night, he trained with Max and Gwen, learning about alien species, advanced technology, and combat techniques. The plumber base beneath Max's house expanded as old contacts reconnected with the veteran agent. Retired plumbers, hearing that Max Tennyson was back in action, began showing up to offer assistance. Some brought alien technology they'd kept as souvenirs. Others brought information about strange occurrences across the country. Ben absorbed it all, his mind constantly working to connect disparate pieces of information into a cohesive picture. A pattern was emerging, the incursions were increasing in frequency and sophistication, as if testing Earth's defenses. "It's like they're probing for weaknesses," he explained one evening, standing before a holographic map in the command center. Red dots indicated confirmed alien activity over the past month. Each incursion targets different infrastructure: water supply, power grid, communications. "Preparing for something bigger," Max agreed, studying the pattern. "But who's coordinating it?" "Ian mentioned Vilgax once," Gwen reminded them. Could he be behind this? Max's expression darkened. Vilgax is one of the most dangerous conquerors in the galaxy. If he's involved, we're in serious trouble. So what's our move? Ben asked, zooming the map to focus on Bellwood. We can't just wait for the next attack. We don't have to, a new voice said from the doorway. Ben turned to see a lanky teenage boy with dark hair leaning against the wall. Despite never having met him, Ben immediately recognized him from Max's files, Kevin Levin, an Osmosian with the ability to absorb energy and properties from anything he touched. Kevin, Max acknowledged with a nod. What have you found? Warehouse district again, Kevin replied, stepping into the room. Different location. Bunch of Volpomancers moving equipment into an abandoned factory. Didn't stick around to see what kind. Volpomancers? Ben asked, bringing up the species file on a nearby screen. Aren't those the ones with no eyes that hunt by smell? And hearing, Kevin confirmed, giving Ben an appraising look. You must be the famous grandson. Gwen said you were a quick study. Gwen talks about me? Ben asked with a smirk. Only to complain, Kevin replied, but there was no malice in his tone. Ben had heard about Kevin from both Max and Gwen, a former juvenile delinquent with a troubled past who occasionally provided information in exchange for technology or favors. What neither had mentioned was how young he was, barely older than Ben himself. When did you see this activity? Max asked, already preparing equipment. About an hour ago, Kevin said, helping himself to an energy drink from a small refrigerator. They didn't spot me. I've gotten pretty good at staying downwind of those things. Max nodded. Gwen's at college until 6. I can call in some of the other plumbers, but they won't be here for at least 2 hours. Ben checked his watch. Whatever the Volpomancers are setting up, it'll probably be operational by then. So what's the plan? Kevin asked, casually examining one of the alien blasters on the workbench. Max hesitated, glancing between Kevin and Ben. Reconnaissance only. We observe, gather intel, and wait for backup. Ben and Kevin exchanged skeptical looks. Sure thing, Max, Kevin said with a grin that suggested he had no intention of following those instructions. The abandoned factory loomed against the evening sky, its broken windows and rusted metal giving it an appropriately ominous appearance. Ben, Max, and Kevin observed from a rooftop across the street, using specialized binoculars to peer through the walls. I count 7 Volpomancers, Ben whispered, scanning systematically. They're setting up some kind of device in the main assembly area. Energy siphon, Kevin said, recognizing the equipment. They're planning to drain the city's power grid. For what purpose? Max wondered, adjusting his own binoculars. Volpomancers aren't known for their technological expertise. Someone else must be directing them. As if on cue, a sleek spacecraft descended silently behind the factory, landing in what used to be the loading yard. Its design was unlike anything Ben had seen in Max's files, angular and predatory, with glowing red accents. That's not in the database, Ben murmured, zooming in as a ramp extended from the ship. Because it's new, Max replied grimly. A Hunter-class vessel. Top of the line. A figure emerged from the ship, tall and imposing, clad in armor that seemed designed for both protection and intimidation. Its face was hidden behind a helmet with a distinctive red visor. Who's that? Ben asked. 6-6, Kevin answered before Max could. Bounty hunter. Nasty piece of work. I had a run-in with him a few years back in New York. What's a bounty hunter doing? With a pack of Volpomancers? Ben wondered. Max's expression was troubled. The only reason to hire someone like 6-6 is if you're looking for something valuable, or someone. The Omnitrix? Ben suggested. Possibly, Max agreed. Or its finder. They watched as 6-6 entered the factory, the Volpomancers immediately showing deference to the armored hunter. Through the binoculars, Ben could see 6-6 examining the energy siphon, making adjustments with precise movements. He's accelerating their timeline, Max observed. That device will be operational within minutes. So much for waiting for backup, Ben muttered. Kevin grinned, his hand touching a metal pipe and absorbing its properties until his skin turned to steel. I was hoping you'd say that. Max gave them both a stern look. We go in quiet. Disable the device, then retreat. No unnecessary confrontation. Got it, Ben nodded, checking his equipment. Besides the standard-issue plumber blaster, he'd brought several of his own modified devices, smoke grenades enhanced with signal jamming technology, a sonic disruptor tuned specifically to Volpomancer hearing, and a compact grappling hook of his own design. Kevin, circle around to the east entrance, Max directed. I'll take the roof. Ben, you're on the loading dock. We move on my signal. They split up, each taking their assigned position. Ben crept through the shadows toward the loading dock, keeping low to avoid the sensitive hearing of the Volpomancers. The dock offered a perfect vantage point of the main assembly area where the energy siphon was being constructed. Through his earpiece, Max's voice came in a whisper. In position. Kevin. Ready, Kevin replied. I can see the whole setup from here. Ben. Max prompted. I'm in place, Ben confirmed, settling behind a stack of rusted barrels. I have eyes on 6-6 and the device. On my mark, Max said. 3, 2, a piercing alarm suddenly blared throughout the factory. The Volpomancers immediately began sniffing the air, growling as they detected intruders. We've been made. Kevin shouted through the comm, so much for stealth, Ben muttered, reaching for his sonic disruptor. Going to Plan B. There is no Plan B. Max replied, but the sound of blaster fire in the background suggested he was already engaged. Ben activated the disruptor, sending high-frequency sound waves through the assembly area. The Volpomancers howled in pain, clutching at the sides of their heads where ears would be on a human. Taking advantage of their disorientation, Ben vaulted over the barrels and sprinted toward the energy siphon. If he could disable the main power coupling, the entire device would be useless. He made it halfway across the floor before something slammed into him from behind, sending him sprawling. Rolling to his feet, he found himself face to face with 6-6, whose armor apparently provided protection against the sonic disruption. The bounty hunter tilted his head, studying Ben through that expressionless red visor. Then he spoke, a series of mechanical clicks and whirs that Ben couldn't understand. Sorry, I don't speak whatever that is, Ben said, backing away slowly and looking for an opening. 6-6 responded by raising his arm, revealing a built-in weapon that began to glow ominously. Ben dove to the side as energy bolts tore through the space he'd occupied moments before. He rolled behind a support column, heart pounding as concrete fragments rained down around him. Ben. What's your status? Max's voice came through the comm, accompanied by the sounds of struggle. Oh, just making friends with the local bounty hunter, Ben replied, checking his blaster only to find it damaged from his fall. Could use some backup. Little busy. Kevin responded, followed by the distinctive sound of metal hitting flesh. These Volpomancers don't stay down easy. Ben assessed his situation. Blaster damaged, sonic disruptor still working but ineffective against 6-6, and the energy siphon nearly operational. He needed a new approach. Looking around, he spotted the factory's old electrical panel on the wall near the siphon. Unlike the water treatment plant, shorting this out wouldn't help, it would just provide more power to the alien device. But maybe that was exactly what he needed. Guys, I have an idea, Ben said into his comm, keep the Volpomancers occupied for another minute. What are you going to do? Max asked, concern evident in his voice. Something probably stupid, Ben admitted, reaching for his grappling hook. But hopefully effective. He aimed the grappling hook at a steel beam above the assembly area and fired. The hook caught, and Ben activated the retraction mechanism, pulling himself rapidly upward just as 6-6 rounded the column, weapons blazing. Swinging above the factory floor, Ben released the grapple at precisely the right moment, landing directly beside the energy siphon. 6-6 immediately adjusted his aim, but hesitated, apparently unwilling to risk damaging the device. That momentary hesitation was all Ben needed. He pulled one of his smoke grenades, modified to include metallic particles that would interfere with electronic systems, and shoved it deep into the central housing of the siphon. 6-6 let out an angry series of mechanical sounds and fired a capture net rather than an energy blast. Ben ducked under it and sprinted toward the electrical panel, pulling his sonic disruptor. "Everyone cover your ears," he shouted into his comm, then hurled the disruptor at the energy siphon just as 6-6 reached it. The bounty hunter caught the device reflexively, exactly as Ben had hoped. Ben reached the electrical panel and yanked it open, exposing the ancient wiring within. Without hesitation, he grabbed the main power cable and yanked it free. Electricity arced through the air as the circuit broke, sending a power surge through the factory's old systems. The surge hit the energy siphon just as the smoke grenade detonated inside it, creating a cascade of electrical failures. The sonic disruptor in 6-6's hand, affected by both the surge and the metallic particles, exploded with a concussive force that knocked the bounty hunter backward. The energy siphon followed suit, a series of smaller explosions rippling through its structure as incompatible technologies reacted violently. Ben was already running, diving behind a concrete barrier as the chain reaction reached the siphon's power core. The resulting explosion rocked the entire factory, sending debris flying in all directions. When the dust settled, Ben peered over the barrier. The siphon was a smoking ruin, and 6-6 lay motionless nearby, his armor scorched and sparking. "Ben!" Max called out, rushing into the assembly area with his blaster raised. "Are you all right?" "Never better," Ben replied, wincing as he stood. His jacket was singed, and he'd definitely added a few new bruises to his collection, but he was intact. "Did we get them all?" "The Vulpamancers scattered when the explosion hit," Kevin reported, joining them. His metal coating was dented in several places, but he seemed unconcerned. "Nice work, Tennyson." "Crazy, but nice." "What about 6-6? Ben asked, nodding toward the fallen bounty hunter. Max approached cautiously, scanner in hand. "Unconscious, but his life support is still functioning." "We should," a mechanical were interrupted him as 6-6 suddenly sat up, visor glowing red once more. Before anyone could react, the bounty hunter pressed a button on his armor. A blinding flash filled the factory. When Ben's vision cleared, 6-6 was gone. "Teleportation," Max explained, checking his scanner. "Short range. He's probably back on his ship." As if confirming Max's assessment, the sound of engines firing up came from behind the factory. "Should we pursue?" Kevin asked, already moving toward the exit. "No," Max decided. "We accomplished our objective. The energy siphon is destroyed." Ben wasn't so sure. "But we still don't know what they were planning to do with all that power, or who sent them." A deep rumble shook the building as 6-6's ship lifted off, visible through the factory's broken roof as it accelerated into the night sky. "I have a feeling we'll find out soon enough," Max said gravely, watching the ship disappear. This was just the beginning. Back at the plumber base, Gwen was waiting for them, her expression a mixture of concern and irritation. "You couldn't wait 4 hours for me to finish my exam?" she demanded, hands on hips. "It was time-sensitive," Ben explained, applying a cooling pack to a particularly nasty bruise on his shoulder. "Besides, we handled it." "Handled it?" Gwen echoed incredulously, gesturing to their various injuries. "You call this handling it?" "The device was destroyed," Max interjected, uploading data from his scanner to the main computer. "And we gathered valuable intelligence." "Like what?" Gwen asked, her annoyance fading as curiosity took over. "Like the fact that someone's hiring professional bounty hunters," Kevin said, helping himself to Max's refrigerator again. 6-6 doesn't come cheap. And the Volpomancers were just muscle, Ben added, joining Max at the computer. They were building an energy siphon powerful enough to drain half the city. But why? Gwen wondered, peering at the data on the screen. What would they need that much power for? Max enlarged a particular image, a component from the siphon that had survived the explosion. This is a resonance amplifier. It's designed to boost scanning signals, allowing them to penetrate materials that would normally block them. Like the ground, Ben realized. They're scanning for something buried. Or someone hiding, Kevin suggested. The implications hung in the air. If 6-6 was searching for the Omnitrix, that meant it was likely still in Bellwood, possibly buried or otherwise concealed. So what's our next move? Gwen asked. Max studied the map of Bellwood, where new red dots indicated today's incident. We need to be proactive. Set up monitoring stations around the city, create an early warning system for any unusual energy signatures. I can help with that, Kevin offered unexpectedly. When everyone looked at him in surprise, he shrugged. What? I've got nothing better to do. Ben hid a smile. Despite Kevin's affected nonchalance, it was clear he was being drawn into their improvised team. And I can start searching news archives from 7 years ago, Gwen suggested. Maybe someone found a meteor or strange watch and it was reported. Good idea, Max nodded. Ben, I want you to. He was interrupted by an alert from the command console. A flashing red symbol indicated an incoming transmission on a secure plumber frequency. Max frowned. That's odd. All active plumbers already know to contact me directly. He pressed a button to accept the transmission. The main screen flickered, then resolved into the image of a blue-skinned humanoid with gill-like features on his face. He wore an official-looking uniform with insignia Ben didn't recognize. Magister Tennyson, the alien greeted formally. It's been some time. Magister Labrid, Max replied, straightening instinctively. This is unexpected. What can I do for Plumber High Command? Labrid's expression was grave. I'm contacting all former plumbers in the sector. We've received disturbing intelligence regarding Earth. It appears that Vilgax has taken a personal interest in your planet. Ben felt a chill at the name. Max had shown them files on Vilgax, a ruthless conqueror responsible for the destruction of multiple worlds. If he was targeting Earth specifically. Because of the Omnitrix? Max asked. Labrid nodded. Our intelligence suggests he believes it's still there, hidden somewhere. He's deployed hunters and scouts to locate it. We've encountered some of them, Max confirmed. A bounty hunter called 6-6 was operating in Bellwood today. 6-6 is just the beginning, Labrid warned. Our sources indicate Vilgax has hired multiple hunters and is preparing for a more direct approach if they fail. How much time do we have? Max asked. Uncertain. Weeks, perhaps. Days, if we're unlucky. Labrid's image flickered slightly. I'm en route to Earth now, but I won't arrive for at least 4 standard cycles. In the meantime, any information you can gather about the Omnitrix's location would be invaluable. Understood, Max said. We'll do what we can. One more thing, Tennyson, Labrid added. If Vilgax does locate the Omnitrix before we do, the plumbers are authorized to implement Protocol Omega. Max's expression hardened. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The transmission ended, leaving the screen blank. What's Protocol Omega? Ben asked into the silence that followed. Max didn't answer immediately, his gaze fixed on the blank screen. Finally, he turned to face them. A last resort, he said quietly. If the Omnitrix cannot be secured, it is to be destroyed, along with anything or anyone in its immediate vicinity. The implications hung heavily in the air. So we find it first, Ben said firmly. Before Vilgax, before the plumbers, before anyone else. Max studied him thoughtfully. It won't be easy. The Omnitrix has been missing for 7 years. If it was easy to find, someone would have found it already. Good thing we like a challenge, Ben replied with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. As they dispersed to their assigned tasks, Ben couldn't help wondering about the device that had shaped so many alternate versions of himself according to Ian. Somewhere in Bellwood, the most powerful technology in the universe was hiding, waiting to be discovered. And for the first time in his life, Ben Tennyson felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, even without alien powers or a mysterious watch. He was a Tennyson, standing between his world and those who would threaten it. That would have to be enough. Chapter 2, Rising Tide, Again. Ben groaned, dragging himself up from the training mat where Gwen had just flipped him for the 5th time in as many minutes. Can we take a break? Pretty sure my spine wasn't meant to bend that way. Vilgax's troops won't offer you a break, Max replied from the edge of the training area, arms crossed as he monitored their progress. They'll exploit any weakness they find. It had been 2 weeks since the encounter with 6-6, and Max had ramped up their training schedule to borderline brutal. Every morning before school, every evening after, and full days on weekends, all spent in the underground plumber facility learning combat techniques, alien physiology weak points, and tactical planning. Maybe they'll all conveniently throw themselves at me one at a time like in the movies, Ben muttered, taking up a defensive stance again. Gwen circled him, her movements fluid and precise. If you spent less time complaining and more time focusing, you might actually land a hit. I'll land, Ben started, but Gwen was already moving, fainting left before sweeping his legs from under him. The mat slammed into his back, knocking the air from his lungs. 6, Gwen counted with a smirk, extending her hand to help him up. Ben took it, and yanked, using her momentum to pull her down while rolling to the side. In one smooth motion, he pinned her arm behind her back. One for me, he grinned. Pink energy suddenly flared around Gwen's body, pushing Ben off with an invisible force. He tumbled backward, landing in an undignified heap against the wall. That's cheating, he protested. That's survival, Max corrected, helping Ben to his feet. In a real fight, your opponents won't follow rules. They'll use every advantage they have. Then why can't I use advantages? Ben asked, gesturing to the array of modified plumber tech on a nearby workbench, his ongoing projects to level the playing field against alien threats. Max considered this, then nodded. Fair point. Grab your equipment. Ben's face lit up. He hurried to the workbench and strapped on the forearm device he'd been modifying, a compact apparatus that combined a grappling line, short-range stunner, and holographic projector in one unit. Finally, he said, adjusting the fit. Let's make this interesting. Gwen raised an eyebrow, her hands glowing faintly with mana. Bring it, doofus. This time, when Gwen charged, Ben was ready. He activated the holographic projector, creating 3 identical images of himself that moved in different directions. Gwen hesitated just long enough for the real Ben to fire his grappling line at the ceiling fixture, pulling himself up and over her attack. He landed behind her and fired a low-power stun blast. Gwen spun, creating a mana shield that absorbed the energy, but the momentary defense left her open for Ben's follow-up, a sweeping kick that finally, satisfyingly, knocked her to the mat. 1-1, Ben announced triumphantly. Not bad, Max admitted, checking his watch. But that's enough for today. You both have school tomorrow, and I have a meeting with some potential allies. Ben deactivated his tech with a disappointed sigh. These training sessions, despite the bruises and exhaustion, had become the highlights of his days. School felt increasingly irrelevant compared to preparing for an alien invasion. Any word from that plumber guy? Labrid? He asked, grabbing a towel to wipe sweat from his face. He's still 3 days out, Max replied. But he's been sending updates. Vilgax's ship has been detected in the neighboring system. The casual mention of an alien warlord in their cosmic backyard still felt surreal to Ben, even after weeks of alien encounters. So we have what, a week? Maybe less. Which is why we need to intensify your training, Max said. And why I'm calling in every favor I have with former plumbers and alien allies living on Earth. Speaking of aliens, Gwen interjected, checking her phone. I've been combing through reports from 7 years ago like you asked. Found something interesting. She pulled up a news article and showed it to them. This was 3 days after the night the Omnitrix supposedly landed. A forest ranger reported unusual animal activity in the national park outside Bellwood. Ben leaned closer, reading the headline, Ranger reports glowing wildlife in National Forest. Glowing wildlife, he echoed. That's weird. Exactly, Gwen nodded. The ranger claimed to see deer and smaller mammals with strange glowing patterns on their bodies. The official explanation was bioluminescent fungi that the animals had brushed against. But you think it might be connected to the Omnitrix, Max finished, stroking his chin thoughtfully. Worth checking out, right? Gwen suggested. Max nodded. I'll add it to our investigation list. But first, you two need rest. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. As they packed up their training gear, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Somewhere in Bellwood, the most powerful device in the universe was hiding in plain sight, and they weren't the only ones looking for it. The next day at school, Ben struggled to stay awake during his classes. Between the grueling training sessions and late nights researching alien technology, normal teenage life had become an exhausting charade. Tennyson, his physics teacher barked, snapping Ben out of a micronap. Perhaps you'd like to explain to the class how kinetic energy is conserved in an elastic collision. Ben blinked, his mind quickly shifting from alien defense strategies to high school physics. Surprisingly, the answer came easily. His recent work with energy weapons had given him a practical understanding of the concept. When objects collide elastically, the kinetic energy before the collision equals the kinetic energy after, he explained. The momentum gets transferred but not lost, so the total energy of the system stays the same. The teacher looked momentarily surprised by the correct answer. Well, yes. That's right. Pay attention anyway. As class continued, Ben found himself drawing connections between the textbook physics and the alien technology he'd been working with. The principles were the same, the applications were just more advanced. For the first time in years, he found himself genuinely interested in his schoolwork, not for the grades, but for how the knowledge might help him adapt and improve his tech. At lunch, he sat alone, sketching modifications for his forearm device in a notebook. He'd realized during training that the power distribution was inefficient, too much energy wasted as heat. If he reconfigured the circuitry. What's that? Some kind of sci-fi weapon. Ben looked up to find Julie Yamamoto, captain of the tennis team and generally way out of his league, standing at his table with her lunch tray. No, he said quickly, covering the drawing. Just doodling. Julie raised an eyebrow. Looks pretty detailed for a doodle. She gestured to the empty seat across from him. Mind if I sit? Go ahead, Ben replied, surprised. They'd been lab partners once in sophomore year, but hadn't spoken much since. She sat down and glanced at his notebook again. You know, you've been different lately. Different how? Ben asked cautiously. I don't know. More focused. Less. She waved her hand vaguely, present. Like your mind is somewhere else entirely. She leaned forward. And you keep missing tennis team practices. Ben winced. He'd completely forgotten he was still technically on the team, even though he hadn't shown up in weeks. Sorry about that. Family stuff came up. For 3 weeks straight. Julie pressed, skepticism clear in her voice. Ben struggled to find a plausible excuse. My grandfather's been having health issues, he lied, immediately feeling guilty. I've been helping out after school. Julie's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. Is he going to be okay? Yeah, he's actually pretty tough, Ben said, thinking of how Max had taken down 2 Volpomancers single-handedly during their last mission. Tougher than he looks. That's good. Julie hesitated, then added, you know, if you need to talk about stuff, I'm a pretty good listener. The unexpected kindness caught Ben off guard. For a moment, he was tempted to tell her everything, about aliens and plumbers and the Omnitrix and how the fate of the world might rest on finding a watch-like device before an intergalactic warlord. But that would sound completely insane. Thanks, he said instead. I appreciate it. The conversation shifted to safer topics, classes, the upcoming spring dance, Julie's tennis tournaments. For 20 minutes, Ben felt like a normal teenager again, with normal worries and normal interests. It was both refreshing and strange, like visiting a foreign country he used to call home. When the bell rang, Julie stood to leave, then paused. Hey, if your grandfather's doing better this weekend, there's a group of us going to see that new sci-fi movie. You should come. I'll check my schedule, Ben replied, knowing he'd probably be hunting aliens or training with Max instead. Julie smiled. Do that. See you around, Ben. As she walked away, Ben felt an odd pang of regret for the normal life he was rapidly leaving behind. But when his phone buzzed with a text from Max, meeting tonight. 7 p.m., bringing new allies, the feeling faded. Normal wasn't an option anymore, not with what he knew was coming. By 7 that evening, Ben had rushed through his homework, made excuses to his parents about a study group, and arrived at Max's base via the secret entrance in the garden shed. What he found inside made him stop in his tracks. The command center was filled with people, and non-people. Besides Gwen and Max, Ben counted at least a dozen individuals, several of whom were definitely not human. A blue-skinned woman with antennae was deep in conversation with a man who appeared normal except for the extra set of arms folded behind his back. Near the main console, what looked like a sentient crystal formation was examining the equipment with glowing eyes. Ah, Ben. Max called, waving him over. Come meet our new allies. When you said you were calling in favors, I didn't realize you meant from across the galaxy, Ben murmured as Max led him through the room. Many alien species have representatives living secretly on Earth, Max explained. Some are refugees, others are here to study humanity, and a few are simply tourists who decided to stay. And they all know you? Ben asked. Max smiled. I had an eventful career before retirement. Over the next hour, Ben was introduced to a dizzying array of individuals: Xylene, a Uxorite scientist who had once worked with Max on containment systems for dangerous alien criminals; Tetrax, a Petrosapian bounty hunter who held a personal grudge against Vilgax for the destruction of his homeworld; Ultimos, a Superman-like alien who was part of a cosmic enforcement group called the Galactic Enforcers, and several human ex-plumbers who had answered Max's call. The diversity of species and abilities was overwhelming, but Ben found himself focusing on the strategic implications. Each new ally brought unique capabilities that could be integrated into a cohesive defense strategy. His mind automatically categorized them: aerial support, heavy assault, infiltration, technical expertise. That's quite the tactical assessment, remarked a voice beside him as he muttered these categories under his breath. Ben turned to find a tall woman with silver-streaked black hair and sharp eyes watching him. She wore standard Earth clothes, but something about her posture suggested military training. Sorry, I was just thinking out loud, Ben apologized. Don't apologize for good strategic thinking, she replied. I'm Verdona. You must be Benjamin. Just Ben, he corrected automatically. Are you a former plumber too? A smile played at the corners of Verdona's mouth. Something like that. I'm actually your grandmother. Ben stared. My grandmother? But you're not what you expected, she finished, clearly amused by his surprise. I get that a lot. Before Ben could process this revelation, Max joined them. I see you've met Verdona, he said, a hint of tension in his voice. She arrived just before you did. You didn't tell me my grandmother was alive, Ben said, still trying to wrap his head around this development. And looking way younger than she should. Anodites age differently, Verdona explained. And Max and I have been separated for some time. I've been off-world, handling matters with my people. Anodites, Ben repeated, making the connection. Like Gwen's abilities. She got them from you. Verdona beamed with pride. She's showing remarkable progress for a hybrid. The spark is strong in her. But not in me, Ben guessed, remembering what Max had told him weeks ago. Verdona studied him intently. No, not the anodite spark. But don't sell yourself short, kiddo. I've been watching you during this little gathering. The way you analyze people, identify strengths and weaknesses, find connections others miss, that's a different kind of power. One that's rarer than you might think. Before Ben could respond, Max called the meeting to order. The diverse group gathered around the central holographic display, where a 3D model of Bellwood rotated slowly. Thank you all for coming, Max began. As you know, we have reliable intelligence that Vilgax is targeting Earth, specifically Bellwood, in his search for the Omnitrix. Our primary objectives are to locate the device before he does, and to prepare Earth's defenses for a potential invasion. Why not simply evacuate the civilians, asked Ultimos, the Superman-like alien. If Vilgax arrives in force, this town will become a battlefield. Evacuation would cause panic and alert Vilgax's advanced scouts that we're onto them, Max explained. Our best chance is to operate covertly until we locate the Omnitrix. And how exactly are we supposed to find a device that's been missing for 7 years, asked a former plumber that Ben didn't recognize. Gwen stepped forward. We've been compiling reports of unusual incidents from around the time of the Omnitrix's arrival, she explained, bringing up a map with several marked locations. Our most promising lead involves unusual animal activity in the national forest outside town. We're also developing scanning technology to detect the Omnitrix's unique energy signature, Max added. But our resources are limited, and we need to cover a large area. That's where you all come in, Ben interjected, stepping forward. The room's attention shifted to him, and he fought back a surge of nervousness. We need to establish a perimeter monitoring system around Bellwood. Early warning for Vilgax's forces, plus a network that can track the energy signature once we isolate it. Max nodded encouragingly. Ben has been working on adapting plumber tech for this purpose. Ben pulled up schematics on the holographic display. These are modified motion sensors with integrated energy scanners. They're calibrated to detect non-terrestrial technology and physiological signatures. If we place them at these key points, he highlighted locations on the map, we'll have coverage of all major entry points to Bellwood. Impressive work for a human adolescent, remarked Tetrax, the crystal-like Petrosapien, examining the schematics. There's just one problem, Ben continued. We've only managed to build a few prototypes. We need parts, tools, and technical expertise to mass-produce these quickly. I believe I can assist with that, offered Xylene, the blue-skinned Uxorite. My laboratory contains sufficient equipment for manufacturing. And I have connections who can provide raw materials, added Tetrax. For the right price, of course. Money won't be an issue, Max assured them. The plumbers maintain emergency funds for situations like this. As the group began discussing logistics and assignments, Ben felt a presence beside him. He turned to find Kevin Levin leaning against a console, arms crossed and expression skeptical. Quite the operation you're putting together, Tennyson, Kevin remarked. But all the fancy tech in the universe won't help if Vilgax decides to just blast this town from orbit. That's why we need to find the Omnitrix first, Ben replied. According to Grandpa, Vilgax wants it intact. That gives us an advantage. He can't just destroy Bellwood without potentially destroying what he's looking for. Kevin shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe he'll just grab you all and torture the information out of you. Not exactly known for his gentle interrogation techniques. Always the optimist, Ben muttered. Why are you even here if you think we're doomed? Professional curiosity, Kevin replied with a grin. Plus, I've never seen a Petrosapien up close before. Thought they were all extinct. Tetrax said he's one of the last, Ben confirmed. Vilgax destroyed their homeworld. Something flashed in Kevin's eyes at that, a brief glimpse of genuine anger. All the more reason to make sure he doesn't get what he wants, I guess. Before Ben could respond, the meeting began breaking up into smaller groups assigned to specific tasks. Max approached them. Kevin, I could use someone with your unique abilities for a special assignment, he said. We need to check out that National Forest lead tonight, and your energy detection skills would be valuable. Kevin straightened, surprise evident on his face. You're actually asking for my help. Not just tolerating my presence. You've proven yourself trustworthy enough, Max replied. Besides, this mission requires a small team. You, Ben, and Gwen should be able to investigate without attracting attention. I'm in, Kevin agreed, trying to sound casual despite the obvious pride at being included officially. We'll take Kevin's car, Ben suggested. It's less recognizable than the rust bucket. Max nodded. Good thinking. Check in every 30 minutes, and at the first sign of trouble, fall back. This is reconnaissance only. Got it, Ben assured him, though they all knew how rarely their mission stayed within those parameters. As they prepared to leave, Ben caught Julie's text message on his phone, confirming details about the weekend movie. With a twinge of regret, he sent back a vague reply about being busy with family. Normal life would have to wait, assuming they had a world left to save. Kevin's muscle car roared through the night, eating up the miles between Bellwood and the National Forest. Despite the sleek exterior, the vehicle had been heavily modified with alien tech, something that became apparent when Kevin activated the camouflage system that rendered them nearly invisible to both human and alien detection methods. Sweet ride, Ben admitted from the passenger seat. Custom work. Built her from scratch, Kevin replied with obvious pride. Engine blocks Earth tech, but I've added some improvements. Hyperflux capacitor from a crashed Cimarron shuttle, gravitational stabilizers from a Tekadon fighter. In English? Gwen asked from the back seat, looking up from her laptop where she was reviewing the Ranger reports. It goes very fast and doesn't obey normal laws of physics when I don't want it to, Kevin simplified with a smirk. As they approached the forest, Ben studied the map on his modified plumber badge. The ranger station is 5 miles up this road, but the sightings were concentrated in this area, he pointed to a section marked in red. We should park here and continue on foot. Kevin pulled off the main road onto a narrow dirt track, driving until they reached a small clearing. The forest loomed dark and silent around them as they exited the vehicle. Everybody got their equipment. Ben checked, activating his forearm device. Gwen's hands glowed with pink energy, providing soft illumination. Ready. Kevin touched the car's metal frame, absorbing its properties until his skin transformed into the same material. Let's do this. They moved into the forest, following the coordinates from the ranger's report. Despite the modifications Ben had made to his tech, he felt distinctly underpowered compared to his companions. Gwen could generate shields, projectiles, and platforms from pure energy, while Kevin's absorbed material made him nearly invulnerable. Ben had a really fancy Swiss Army knife, essentially. But as Max kept reminding him, humanity had survived for thousands of years without superpowers. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage were powers in their own right. After 20 minutes of hiking, they reached a small clearing that matched the description in the report. Ben activated the scanner function on his device, sweeping it slowly across the area. I'm not picking up any unusual energy signatures, he reported. Kevin. Kevin closed his eyes, concentrating. As an Osmosian, he could sense energy fields in ways technology couldn't always match. There's something, faint. Like an echo. Whatever was here left traces, but it's been a long time. 7 years, Gwen murmured, kneeling to touch the ground. Her eyes glowed briefly. There's residual mana here, but it's different from mine. More mechanical. If that makes sense. The Omnitrix contains DNA samples from thousands of species, Ben reminded them. That's a lot of different energy types in one device. They spread out to search the clearing, looking for any physical evidence that might have survived the years. Ben's scanner suddenly beeped, detecting something buried beneath a fallen log. "I've got something," he called, pushing the log aside. Beneath it, partially buried in the soil, was a small metallic fragment no larger than a coin. Ben carefully extracted it, holding it up to the light of Gwen's mana. "Is that part of the Omnitrix?" Gwen asked, leaning closer. "I don't think so," Ben replied, examining it. "The composition's wrong. It looks more like hull material. From a ship or pod." Kevin took the fragment, his fingertips shifting to a more sensitive material to better analyze it. "Definitely from a transport vessel. High-grade alloy, designed to withstand atmospheric entry." So the Omnitrix arrived in this clearing, Ben reasoned, looking around with new eyes. But where did it go from here? Gwen closed her eyes, concentrating on the residual energy. "I'm sensing movement. That way," she pointed deeper into the forest. "Something left this clearing, heading northeast." They followed Gwen's psychic trail, moving carefully through the dense undergrowth. The forest grew thicker, the spaces between trees narrowing until they were forced to proceed in single file. "The energy signature is getting stronger," Kevin reported, his voice hushed. "Whatever we're tracking, we're getting closer." The trail led them to a steep ravine cutting through the forest. At the bottom, a small stream gurgled over rocks. Ben's scanner indicated they should follow the waterway. "Makes sense," he observed. If something was injured or disoriented, it might follow the path of least resistance. As they made their way downstream, Ben's scanner began picking up stronger readings. The narrow ravine eventually opened into a wider valley, where the stream joined a larger river. On the opposite bank stood a modest cabin with a small dock extending into the water. "Someone lives here," Gwen whispered, surprised. "The energy trail leads directly to that cabin," Kevin confirmed. Ben checked his map. "We're still inside the national forest, but this section allows private residences with special permits. Probably a ranger or forest service employee. Or someone who found an alien watch 7 years ago and decided to live in isolation," Kevin suggested. They approached cautiously, crossing the river at a shallow point upstream to avoid being seen from the cabin's windows. As they drew closer, Ben noticed something odd about the property. While the cabin itself looked rustic and unremarkable, the small shed beside it had what appeared to be a sophisticated security system, completely out of place in this remote setting. "That's definitely not standard Forest Service equipment," Ben murmured, zooming in with his scanner. "Those are motion detectors, heat sensors, and, is that a DNA scanner on the door?" "Whoever lives here really values their privacy," Gwen observed. Kevin crouched, touching the ground. "The energy signature is strongest around that shed. Whatever we're tracking, it's in there." "So what's the plan?" Gwen asked. "We can't just knock on the door and ask if they happen to have found an alien watch 7 years ago." Ben studied the cabin and shed, noting the patterns of light that suggested someone was home. "Actually, that's exactly what we're going to do." "Sort of." "Come again?" Kevin raised an eyebrow. "Whoever lives here has managed to keep the Omnitrix hidden for 7 years, Ben explained. They're either unaware of what they have, or they're deliberately hiding it. Either way, a direct confrontation might spook them. "So what do you suggest?" Gwen asked. Ben grinned. "A little social engineering." 10 minutes later, Ben approached the cabin's front door alone, while Gwen and Kevin remained hidden in the tree line, ready to intervene if necessary. He'd removed his tech and anything that might identify him as anything other than a lost hiker. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the door. For several long moments, there was no response. Then, a gruff voice called from inside, "Who's there?" "Sorry to bother you," Ben called back, infusing his voice with calculated nervousness. "I'm lost and my phone died. I saw your light and was hoping to use a phone or get directions back to the main trail." More silence, then the sound of multiple locks being disengaged. The door opened a few inches, revealing an elderly man with a weathered face and suspicious eyes. "Park's closed after dark," the man stated flatly. "How'd you get this far in?" "I was hiking and lost track of time," Ben explained, looking appropriately embarrassed. "Then I took a wrong turn trying to get back and ended up here. I'm really sorry to disturb you." The man studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Fine. Phone's in the kitchen. One call, then you're on your way." "Thank you, sir," Ben replied gratefully, stepping inside as the man reluctantly opened the door wider. The cabin's interior was sparsely furnished but clean. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with texts on biology, zoology, and forest ecology. A desk in the corner held stacks of handwritten journals and field guides. Everything suggested a dedicated naturalist or researcher. "Phone's there," the man said, pointing to an old landline on the kitchen wall. "Make it quick." "Thank you," Ben repeated, moving toward the phone while surreptitiously scanning the cabin for any sign of alien technology or unusual objects. Nothing immediately stood out, but he noticed something odd. While the main living space had the expected rustic, lived-in feel, a door leading to what was presumably a back room was secured with an electronic lock completely at odds with the rest of the decor. As Ben pretended to dial, actually inputting a code that would send his GPS coordinates to Gwen and Kevin, he casually asked, "Have you lived here long?" "Long enough," the man replied curtly, watching Ben with unwavering attention. "You from around here?" "Bellwood," Ben answered truthfully. "Just out for a weekend hike." "Bellwood," the man repeated, something flickering in his eyes. "Interesting place. Lot of strange occurrences there lately." Ben kept his expression neutral. "Really? I haven't noticed anything unusual." "No." The man crossed to a side table and picked up a newspaper. The headline read, "Unexplained Explosion at Abandoned Factory," an article about their encounter with 6-6. "Just normal city stuff," Ben shrugged, finishing his fake call. "Thanks for the phone. I should get going." "Indeed you should," the man agreed, moving to open the door. "Main trail's 2 miles that way," he pointed. "Follow the river, can't miss it." As Ben stepped outside, he noticed a subtle change in the man's demeanor, a tension that hadn't been there before. He was being assessed, analyzed. "Thanks again for your help, mister." Ben trailed off questioningly. "Onimo," the man supplied after a slight hesitation. "Dr. Aloysius Onimo." The name triggered a memory in Ben's mind, something from the files Max had shown them about known human collaborators with alien entities. Onimo had been a brilliant biologist whose unethical experiments had cost him his career and reputation. "Dr. Onimo," Ben repeated, maintaining his innocent facade. "Well, thanks again. Have a good night." As he walked away from the cabin, following the direction Onimo had indicated, Ben felt the man's eyes on his back. Only when he was out of sight among the trees did he deviate from the path, circling back toward where Gwen and Kevin waited. "Well?" Gwen asked as he rejoined them. "It's Dr. Aloysius Onimo," Ben reported. "He's on Grandpa's watch list, former geneticist with a history of illegal experiments. Definitely hiding something in there. Electronic locks on interior doors, way more security than makes sense for a cabin in the woods." "Did you see the Omnitrix?" Kevin asked. Ben shook his head. "No, but I'm betting it's either in that shed or behind the secured door inside." Either way, Onimo was definitely suspicious. "We need to move quickly before he decides to relocate." So what's the plan? Gwen asked. Ben considered their options. The security on the shed is too sophisticated for a frontal approach. But there might be another way in. He pointed to where the small dock extended into the river. That shed is built partially over the water. Most security systems focus on doors, windows, and walls, but what about from underneath? Kevin grinned. I like how you think, Tennyson. They made their way to the riverbank, staying low and out of sight from the cabin's windows. The dock stretched about 20 feet into the water, with the mysterious shed positioned at its end, partially suspended over the river on sturdy pilings. I'll check for underwater access, Kevin offered, his metallic form well suited to brief submersion. Be careful, Ben warned. Even if Onimo hasn't secured the underside, he might have other defenses we haven't identified. Kevin nodded, then slipped into the water with barely a ripple. Ben and Gwen waited tensely, watching both the shed and the cabin for any sign they'd been detected. After what felt like an eternity, Kevin's head emerged from the water near the dock. He gestured for them to join him, pointing to a spot beneath the shed. There's a maintenance hatch, he whispered when they reached him. Probably for accessing pipes or wiring. It's locked, but I can break it open. Ben nodded. Do it. Gwen, can you create a shield around us to keep the water out once we're inside? For a short time, she confirmed, her hands already glowing with energy. Kevin submerged again, with Ben and Gwen following. The river was cold and dark, but Gwen's mana provided enough illumination to see where they were going. Kevin led them to a small metal hatch set into the underside of the shed. As promised, he gripped the lock and, with his enhanced strength, snapped it cleanly. The hatch swung open, revealing a small space filled with pipes and wiring. Kevin went first, pulling himself up into the crawlspace, followed by Ben and Gwen. Once inside, Gwen created a small energy bubble that pushed the water out, giving them a dry space to work. Tight fit, Ben muttered, squeezing between pipes. But there's an access panel up there that should lead into the shed itself. Kevin reached up and carefully removed the panel, revealing the shed's interior. With surprising agility for his bulky metallic form, he pulled himself up and through the opening, then reached back to help Ben and Gwen. The inside of the shed was nothing like its rustic exterior suggested. Every wall was lined with sophisticated equipment, monitoring stations, containment units, and what appeared to be experimental apparatus. In the center stood a sealed glass case on a pedestal, illuminated by soft blue light. And inside the case, resting on a cushioned stand, was a watch-like device with a distinctive hourglass symbol on its face. The Omnitrix, Ben breathed, approaching the case. We found it. That was almost too easy, Gwen said warily, looking around. Why would Onimo leave it here instead of keeping it in the cabin with him? Because it's not the real one, came a voice from the doorway. They spun to find Dr. Onimo standing there, a strange device aimed at them. He looked completely different from the old man Ben had met, his lab coat was pristine, his posture straight and confident, and his eyes gleamed with a disturbing intelligence. I suspected the plumbers would eventually come looking, Onimo continued, stepping into the shed and closing the door behind him. Though I expected Maxwell Tennyson himself, not a group of children. How did you know we were plumbers? Ben asked, subtly shifting to put himself between Onimo and his friends. Onimo laughed. Please. The questions you asked, the way you assessed my cabin, you're obviously trained. Besides, I've been monitoring plumber communications for years. I know about Vilgax, the approaching invasion, all of it. Then you know how important it is that we secure the Omnitrix, Gwen said, her hands glowing in preparation for a fight. Indeed I do, Onimo agreed. Which is why I created this elaborate setup. A perfect replica to draw out whoever came searching, whether plumber or alien. He gestured to the watch in the case. Go ahead, examine it. You'll find it's a remarkable facsimile, down to the energy signature. Ben approached the case cautiously. Now that he looked closer, he could see subtle irregularities in the device, proportions that weren't quite right, materials that seemed slightly off. "It's a fake," he confirmed. "But a very good one. You must have had access to detailed specifications." "I had better than specifications," Onimo replied, a hint of pride in his voice. "I had the original to study. For years." "You found the Omnitrix," Kevin realized. 7 years ago in the forest." Onimo nodded. "I was conducting field research when a strange pod crashed nearby. Inside was the most remarkable piece of technology I'd ever encountered. I recognized its alien origin immediately and understood its value." "So where is it now?" Ben demanded. "The real Omnitrix?" Something shifted in Onimo's expression, a calculation, a decision being made. "I know. Longer have it. I studied it for 5 years, learning its secrets, attempting to replicate its DNA storage capabilities. Then, 2 years ago, it was stolen from me." "Stolen?" Gwen echoed skeptically. "By whom?" "A former assistant," Onimo said bitterly. "A brilliant young man who worked with me to understand the device. One day, he simply disappeared, along with the Omnitrix and much of my research." Ben exchanged glances with Kevin and Gwen. If Onimo was telling the truth, their search had just become considerably more complicated. "This assistant," Ben pressed. "Did he have a name?" Onimo hesitated, then seemed to decide cooperation was in his best interest. "Albedo. He claimed to be a graduate student in genetics, but in retrospect, I believe he was of alien origin himself. His understanding of the technology was too intuitive." "And you've been using this fake to try to lure him back," Ben guessed, the pieces falling into place. "The energy signature would be detectable to anyone specifically searching for the Omnitrix." "Precisely," Onimo confirmed. "Though recently, I've been more concerned with the increase in alien activity around Bellwood. I suspected Vilgax's forces might come looking here." "Why are you telling us all this?" Gwen asked suspiciously. "You could have simply triggered an alarm when we broke in." Onimo smiled thinly. "Because, my dear, I'm a pragmatist. Vilgax is coming, and I have no desire to be caught in the middle of an alien invasion. If the plumbers can locate the Omnitrix and deal with this albedo, all the better for me." "You expect us to believe you're just being altruistic?" Kevin scoffed. "Hardly," Onimo replied. "I have conditions. First, immunity from prosecution for my past research. Second, access to any scientific data the plumbers gather on alien species. And third, protection when Vilgax arrives, which I suspect will be sooner rather than later." Ben studied the scientist carefully. Onimo was clearly brilliant but untrustworthy. Yet his information might be their only lead to finding the real Omnitrix. "We'll need to discuss your terms with our superiors," Ben said diplomatically. "But any information you can provide about albedo would be valuable." "Of course," Onimo nodded. "I have files, photographs, research notes, everything I've gathered in my attempts to track him. He appears to still be in the Bellwood area, though he's been careful to conceal his activities." The conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm from Ben's plumber badge. He activated it to find Max's urgent face on the small screen. "Ben. You need to get back to Bellwood immediately. We're picking up multiple entry signatures in the atmosphere." "They're here." "Vilgax?" Ben asked, dread pooling in his stomach. "No, but definitely his advance forces," Max replied. "At least 3 Hunter-class ships have breached Earth's detection grid. They're converging on Bellwood." "We're on our way," Ben assured him, then turned to Onimo. "Looks like your protection request just became immediately relevant. Gather whatever data you have on albedo and come with us." Onimo looked momentarily conflicted, then nodded. "I'll need 5 minutes to collect my essential research and trigger the self-destruct on this facility. I can't risk Vilgax's forces finding even my replica technology." "Make it fast," Kevin urged, already moving toward the door. Those hunter ships won't waste time once they land. As Onimo hurried to gather his research, Ben quickly briefed Max on what they'd discovered. The revelation that someone named Albedo had possessed the Omnitrix for 2 years clearly concerned the veteran plumber. Albedo, Max repeated thoughtfully. That name sounds familiar. I'll check our databases. In the meantime, get back here as quickly as possible. We're implementing the defense perimeter now. Within minutes, they were piling into Kevin's car, Onimo clutching a waterproof case containing his research materials. As they sped back toward Bellwood, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against a rapidly closing window of opportunity. The real Omnitrix was still out there, somewhere in Bellwood, in the hands of a mysterious individual named Albedo. And now Vilgax's hunters had arrived, presumably with the same objective: find the device at any cost. The quiet investigation phase was over. War had come to Bellwood. Kevin's car screeched to a halt outside Max's house just as the sky above Bellwood lit up with the fiery trails of incoming spacecraft. Unlike the subtle arrival of Sixix's ship, these vessels made no attempt at stealth, a clear statement of intent and confidence. They're not even trying to hide, Gwen observed, staring upward as they rushed toward the hidden base entrance. It's like they want people to see them coming. Psychological warfare, Ben replied grimly. They're announcing their presence to inspire fear. Inside the base, organized chaos reigned. The allies Max had gathered were moving with urgent purpose, preparing weapons, coordinating communication systems, and monitoring the approaching threat. Max himself stood at the central console, directing operations with the calm efficiency of a veteran commander. Ben, Gwen, Kevin, he acknowledged as they entered. And Dr. Onimo, I presume. Onimo stepped forward, clutching his case of research materials. Maxwell Tennyson. It's been a long time. Not long enough, Max replied coolly. But we can discuss your numerous ethical violations later. Right now, your information about Albedo is our priority. As Onimo began transferring his data to the plumber systems, Ben joined Max at the main tactical display. The hologram showed 3 hunter ships descending toward different parts of Bellwood, the industrial district, the downtown area, and the suburbs near Ben's own neighborhood. Strategic positioning, Ben noted. They're creating a triangulation pattern to maximize search efficiency. And to divide our response, Max agreed. We can't cover all 3 landing sites with equal force. Then we prioritize, Ben suggested, studying the projected landing zones. The industrial district gives them the most cover and potential resources. The downtown area has the highest civilian population at risk. And the suburban site. He trailed off, a thought occurring to him. Why would they target that specific neighborhood? Max zoomed in on the suburban landing zone. It's within 2 miles of both your house and mine. They may be targeting known plumber locations. Or they have intelligence on Albedo's whereabouts, Ben suggested. If he's been hiding in plain sight in a residential area. Possible, Max conceded. Either way, we need to deploy our forces strategically. Ultimos and the Galactic Enforcers can handle the downtown area, their priority will be civilian protection and evacuation. Tetrax and half our plumber allies will secure the industrial zone. I'll lead the response in the suburbs with you 3 and the remaining team. What about me? Onimo asked, having finished his data transfer. You'll stay here in the command center with Xylene, Max decided. Your knowledge of the Omnitrix and Albedo might prove useful as the situation develops. As the various teams prepared for deployment, Ben reviewed the equipment he'd been developing. His forearm device had been upgraded with additional features based on alien tech, improved scanning range, stronger grappling line, and a multi-phase energy beam that could be adjusted for different targets. He'd also created a series of specialized grenades, EMP for disabling electronics, sonic disruptors tuned to specific alien physiologies, and smoke bombs laced with sensor jamming particles. Impressive arsenal, remarked Verdona, appearing beside him as he packed the devices into a tactical vest. Though I still say a little anodite energy would complement it nicely. We work with what we've got, Ben replied with a shrug. Besides, I've found most aliens don't expect a human to be a threat. Makes for a useful advantage. Verdona studied him thoughtfully. You know, in some ways, you remind me more of myself than Gwen does. She has the raw power, but you have the adaptability and unconventional thinking. Both valuable in their own way. Before Ben could respond, Max called the team together for final instructions. These are Hunter-class vessels, he explained, displaying schematics on the tactical screen. Each likely carries one primary hunter and multiple combat drones. Their objective will be to secure the Omnitrix by any means necessary, which may include taking hostages or causing structural damage to flush out targets. They'll also have scanning technology looking for the Omnitrix's energy signature, Ben added. Which means Onimo's replica might actually work as a distraction. Max considered this. Good thinking. Dr. Onimo, can your replica generate a convincing enough signature to register on their scanners? Onimo smiled smugly. With some minor adjustments, absolutely. I can even modify it to broadcast at a higher intensity, making it appear more valuable than the real thing. Do it, Max ordered. We'll use it to draw attention away from wherever the real Omnitrix might be. As Onimo set to work, Ben pulled Gwen and Kevin aside. We should review Onimo's data on albedo. If the hunters are looking for the same thing we are, we need to find him first. They huddled around a side terminal, scrolling through the files Onimo had provided. Photographs showed a young man with pale skin, white hair, and red eyes, clearly not entirely human. His last known location, according to Onimo's tracking attempts, was an apartment complex in the eastern part of Bellwood. That's less than a mile from where one of the ships is landing, Gwen noted. Could be coincidence, or they know exactly where they're going, Kevin finished grimly. They might already have albedo's location. Ben zoomed in on the photograph, studying albedo's features. Something about him seemed oddly familiar, though Ben couldn't place why. We need to get to him before they do, he decided. Grandpa's team can handle the hunter while we track down albedo. Splitting up is risky, Gwen cautioned. Especially with limited communication if they start jamming signals. Higher risk, higher reward, Ben replied. If we secure the Omnitrix, the hunters lose their primary objective. Kevin nodded in agreement. I'm with Ben on this one. Hit the source of the problem rather than just dealing with symptoms. Their planning was interrupted by a thunderous boom that shook the entire base, the impact of the hunter ship's landing. Moments later, alarms blared as the perimeter sensors they'd established began triggering in sequence. They've landed, Max announced. Unnecessarily. Everyone to your assigned positions. Remember, our primary objectives are civilian protection and locating the Omnitrix. Engage the hunters only when necessary, and fall back if overwhelmed. The various teams moved out through different exits, heading toward their designated areas. Ben, Gwen, and Kevin joined Max's group, which included Verdona and 2 ex-plumbers equipped with advanced weaponry. Change of plans, Ben told Max quietly as they boarded the modified Rust Bucket, a vehicle that looked like a standard RV but contained plumber technology that made it essentially a mobile armored command center. We have albedo's likely location from Onimo's data. It's close to the suburban landing site. Max considered this. If Vilgax's hunters are after albedo specifically, then that's where we need to be, Ben finished. We can split the team, you handle the hunter, while we track down albedo. After a moment of consideration, Max nodded. Agreed. But extreme caution, understood? No heroics. If you locate albedo, report in immediately before making contact. Got it, Ben promised, though they all knew the situation would likely demand improvisation once things were in motion. The Rust Bucket roared to life, its engine far more powerful than its unassuming exterior suggested. As they headed toward the suburban landing zone, Ben caught glimpses of the chaos already unfolding across Bellwood, people fleeing their homes, emergency vehicles rushing to respond to the unexplained meteorite impacts, and in the distance, the ominous silhouettes of the alien vessels illuminated by spotlights and emergency flares. "This is going to be hard to cover up," Kevin remarked, watching a news helicopter circling above downtown. "One crisis at a time," Max replied grimly, activating the rust bucket's advanced sensors. "We've got movement at the landing site. Looks like the hunter is already deploying drones." The suburban neighborhood came into view, or what remained of it. The hunter ship had crushed several houses upon landing, and fires were spreading from ruptured gas lines. Emergency responders were already on scene, trying to evacuate residents while avoiding the mechanical drones that hovered around the perimeter of the crash site. "Drop us 2 blocks east," Ben instructed, checking the coordinates of Albedo's suspected apartment. "We'll approach on foot while you deal with the hunter." Max brought the rust bucket to a halt behind a row of evacuated houses, providing cover for Ben's team to disembark. "Check in every 10 minutes, he ordered. "If you find Albedo, do not engage without backup. We don't know what modifications he might have made to the Omnitrix or what other capabilities he possesses." "Understood," Ben replied, checking his equipment one final time. "Good luck with the hunter." "I make my own luck," Max responded with a grim smile. "Verdona, you're with me. The rest of you, follow Ben's lead." As the rust bucket pulled away toward the hunter ship, Ben turned to Gwen and Kevin. "Albedo's apartment is in that complex," he pointed to a 3-story building several hundred yards away. "We approach carefully, using the evacuation chaos as cover." "What if he's already gone?" Kevin asked. "If I had the most powerful device in the universe and saw alien ships landing, I'd be out of here." "He's had the Omnitrix for 2 years, Ben reasoned. "If Onimo's data is accurate, he's been using it to conduct his own experiments. He might see this as an opportunity rather than a threat." They moved through the darkened neighborhood, staying in shadows and avoiding the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. The sounds of battle could already be heard from the direction of the hunter ship, energy weapons discharging, metal impacting metal, and the occasional explosion. As they approached the apartment complex, Ben noted that it was strangely untouched by the surrounding chaos. While neighboring buildings were being evacuated, this one showed no signs of activity, no residents fleeing, no emergency personnel. "Something's off," Gwen whispered, her hands glowing faintly as she sensed for energy signatures. "This whole building feels shielded somehow. Some kind of dampening field?" Ben suggested, checking his scanner. The device showed significant interference, its readings fluctuating wildly. "Advanced tech for a basic apartment building," Kevin observed, touching the exterior wall and absorbing its concrete properties. "I'll check the perimeter, see if there's any obvious security." While Kevin circled the building, Ben and Gwen found a position with a clear view of the main entrance and fire escapes. According to Onimo's information, Albedo occupied an apartment on the 3rd floor. "There," Gwen suddenly whispered, pointing to a window on the top floor. A figure had briefly appeared, silhouetted against a blue light source inside. Ben focused his scanner, trying to penetrate the interference. "I'm getting unusual energy readings from that unit. Could be the Omnitrix." Kevin rejoined them, his concrete form now returned to normal. "Place is wired with serious security tech. Motion sensors, DNA scanners at all entrances, and what looks like a localized force field generator on the roof. Not your average apartment setup," Ben muttered. "Definitely our guy." Before they could formulate a plan to approach, a massive explosion rocked the area. They turned to see a pillar of fire rising from where the hunter ship had landed. The battle had clearly intensified. "Grandpa," Gwen said worriedly, raising her plumber badge to check communications. Only static answered. "Comms are being jammed." "We stick to the mission," Ben decided after a moment's hesitation. "Secure Albedo and the Omnitrix. That's how we best help everyone." As they watched, the apartment building's front doors suddenly opened, and a figure emerged, a young man with white hair and pale skin, dressed in a red jacket. Even from a distance, the resemblance to the photos in Onimo's files was unmistakable. "Albedo," Ben confirmed, watching through his scanner's magnification. "And he's wearing something on his wrist. That has to be the Omnitrix." "He's heading right toward the battle," Gwen observed as Albedo moved purposefully in the direction of the hunter ship. "Maybe he thinks he can take on the hunter with the Omnitrix's power," Kevin suggested. "Or he's trying to escape in the confusion," Ben countered. "Either way, we need to intercept him before he reaches the ship." They moved quickly, paralleling Albedo's path while staying concealed. The white-haired young man seemed oddly calm despite the chaos around him, moving with deliberate steps and occasionally consulting a device in his hand that resembled a more advanced version of a plumber badge. "He's scanning for something," Ben noted. "Probably trying to locate the hunter." As Albedo approached the battle zone, the full scope of the confrontation came into view. The hunter ship had deployed at least a dozen combat drones, spherical machines bristling with weapons that hovered and darted through the air. Max and his team had established a defensive perimeter, using the Rust Bucket's weapons systems and their own specialized equipment to hold the machines at bay. The hunter itself was a sight to behold, a massive, insectoid alien standing at least 8 feet tall, with gleaming armor and multiple limbs wielding an array of deadly weaponry. It moved with surprising speed and agility for its size, coordinating the drone's attacks while engaging directly with Max and Verdona. "That's a mycelian hunter," Gwen whispered, recognizing the species from their training. "They have natural camouflage capabilities and enhanced sensory perception." "Meaning it will detect us coming from a mile away," Kevin added grimly. Ben watched as Albedo paused at the edge of the battle, observing the confrontation with clinical detachment. Then, with deliberate calm, he raised his wrist, revealing a device that unmistakably matched the descriptions of the Omnitrix. "He's going to transform," Ben realized. "We need to move now." But before they could intervene, Albedo activated the device. A flash of green light enveloped him, and when it faded, he had been replaced by a massive, four-armed red alien, a tetramand, similar to the ones they had encountered weeks ago at the water treatment plant, but with inverted coloration. "Interesting," the transformed Albedo remarked in a deep, resonant voice. "Let's see how this primitive hunter fares against a properly utilized Omnitrix." With that declaration, he leapt into the battle, landing directly between the hunter and Max's team. The hunter immediately redirected its attention, chittering excitedly in its native language as it recognized the Omnitrix symbol on Albedo's chest. "Target acquired," it announced in heavily accented English. "Surrender the Omnitrix and your termination will be painless." "I think not," Albedo replied, cracking all 4 sets of knuckles. "In fact, I believe you'll be providing me with valuable research data on mycelian combat capabilities." The two powerful aliens collided in a blur of motion, their impact creating a shockwave that rippled outward. Max and his team fell back, regrouping behind the Rust Bucket's defensive shields. "Now's our chance," Ben told Gwen and Kevin. While they're focused on each other, we approach Max and coordinate. They circled wide around the battle, using the distraction to reach the Rust Bucket without being detected by the remaining drones. Max looked surprised but relieved to see them. "Ben. We lost communications, what's happening?" he asked urgently. "That's Albedo," Ben explained, pointing to the four-armed alien battling the hunter. "He has the Omnitrix and seems to be using it to fight the hunter." "For now," Max noted grimly. "But we can't assume his intentions align with ours. If he defeats the hunter, he might simply take the ship for himself. Or Vilgax could arrive and take the Omnitrix from both of them," Verdona added, her hands glowing with energy as she maintained a shield around their position. Ben studied the battle, noticing how Albedo used the tetramand form with practiced efficiency, clearly familiar with its capabilities. "We need a way to contain both of them." "The ship has a stasis field generator," one of the ex-plumbers suggested. "If we could activate it, it would immobilize everything within a 100-yard radius." But how do we get to it without being caught in it ourselves? Gwen asked. Ben's mind raced, analyzing the components and systems at their disposal. The rust bucket's null-void projector, he suggested, turning to Max, if we modify it to emit on the same frequency as the stasis field but in a counterphase. We could create a localized immunity zone, Max finished, catching on immediately. But we'd need direct access to the ship's systems to synchronize the frequencies. I can handle that, Kevin volunteered. If I can touch the ship's hull, I can absorb enough of its properties to interface with the onboard computer. Too risky to approach directly, Ben countered, watching as Albedo and the hunter continued their titanic struggle, demolishing what remained of the surrounding houses. But what if we use the drones? Everyone looked at him questioningly. The hunter controls them remotely, Ben explained, pointing to the spherical machines that continued to circle the battlefield. If we can capture one and reprogram it, we could use it to access the ship's systems. Capture a combat drone, one of the plumbers said skeptically. Those things are designed to self-destruct if tampered with. Not if we shut them down correctly, Ben replied confidently. Their power cells have an emergency cutoff sequence, standard protocol for all Hunter-class equipment according to the files Grandpa showed us. Max nodded slowly, impressed by Ben's recall and application of the information. It could work. But we'd need a distraction to isolate one of the drones. Leave that to me, Gwen volunteered, her hands glowing brighter. I've been working on a new mana technique that should create quite a spectacle. The plan came together quickly, with each team member taking their assigned role. Gwen would create the distraction, drawing the drone's attention. Ben and Kevin would capture and reprogram one. Max and the other plumbers would prepare the rust bucket's null-void projector for modification. Ready? Ben asked, checking that everyone was in position. At Gwen's nod, she stepped out from behind their cover and raised her hands skyward. Pink energy erupted from her palms, forming into dozens of glowing constructs that resembled birds. These energy creations shot upward, then dove toward the circling drones, creating a chaotic light show that immediately drew their attention. Now! Ben signaled to Kevin. They sprinted toward the nearest drone that had broken from the main group to investigate Gwen's constructs. Kevin touched a metal fragment from the battle debris, coating himself in the material, while Ben readied a specialized EMP device tuned specifically to the drone's operating frequency. As the drone turned to detect them, Ben fired the EMP. The pulse hit the machine, causing it to falter midair. Before it could recover or self-destruct, Kevin leapt upward with enhanced strength, grabbing the drone and forcing it to the ground. Ben was on it immediately, locating the access panel and applying a bypass sequence using his modified plumber tech. The cutoff is a 3-stage process, he explained rapidly as his fingers flew over the controls. Power down weapons, isolate self-destruct mechanism, then full system reset. The drone's lights flickered, then stabilized at a lower intensity, indicating successful capture. Got it, Ben announced. Now for the reprogramming. While Kevin held the disabled drone steady, Ben connected his device to its control systems, uploading a modified command sequence. This will override its primary directives and allow us to access the ship's main computer. How long? Kevin asked, glancing nervously at the battle between Albedo and the hunter, which was gradually moving closer to their position. 30 seconds, Ben replied, watching the progress bar on his device. Once it's done, the drone will fly to the ship, dock with an access port, and transmit the commands to activate the stasis field while simultaneously sending the frequency data to the rust bucket. The upload completed, and Ben sealed the access panel. Release it. Kevin cautiously let go of the drone, which hovered in place for a moment, then shot toward the hunter ship with purpose. Back to the rust bucket, Ben directed. We need to be ready when that frequency data comes through. They rejoined Max and the others just as the modified drone reached the hunter ship and attached itself to an external port. Almost immediately, the rust bucket systems began receiving data. It worked. Max confirmed, rapidly inputting commands into the null void projector. Adjusting phase now. Everyone inside the RV will be protected when the stasis field activates. They piled into the vehicle as Max completed the modifications. Through the reinforced windows, they watched as the hunter ship began to pulse with energy, the stasis field powering up. 3 seconds to activation, Max announced. Brace yourselves. A wave of blue energy erupted from the hunter ship, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. Where it touched, everything froze, debris suspended in midair, fires paused mid-flicker, and most importantly, both Albedo and the hunter locked in combat stances, completely immobilized. It worked! Gwen exclaimed, staring out at the frozen battlefield. The counterphase is holding, Max confirmed, checking the rust bucket systems. We're protected from the effect. Ben was already moving toward the door. We need to secure the Omnitrix while they're both contained. Carefully, Max cautioned. The field has them immobilized, but it won't last forever. The ship's power cells will drain within 20 minutes. They exited the rust bucket, moving cautiously through the stasis field. The sensation was strange, like walking through invisible molasses, with a slight resistance to every movement. Around them, the world stood perfectly still, caught in a moment of frozen time. Albedo and the hunter were locked in combat 10 yards away, the Tetraman's massive fists inches from connecting with the hunter's armored head. The Omnitrix symbol gleamed on Albedo's chest, clearly visible and seemingly unaffected by the stasis field. Interesting, Ben murmured, approaching carefully. The Omnitrix itself is resisting the field somehow. It exists partially outside normal spacetime, Max explained. According to the files, it contains its own power source that operates on different physical principles than conventional technology. Ben reached toward the device, hesitating just before touching it. So how do we remove it without releasing Albedo from stasis? We don't, Max replied grimly. The Omnitrix bonds to its user at a genetic level. Removing it forcibly could kill him, and potentially damage the device itself. So what's the plan? Kevin asked, maintaining his metallic form as a precaution. Containment, Max decided. We take them both, Albedo and the hunter, back to the plumber base while they're immobilized. Once there, we can negotiate from a position of strength. And if the stasis field fails during transport? Gwen asked. Then we have backup, Max replied, gesturing to the approaching figures of Tetrax and several other allies who had apparently concluded their missions at the other landing sites. The downtown site is secure, Tetrax reported as he joined them. Ultimos and his team have the civilians evacuated and the hunter contained. Same at the industrial zone, added another plumber. Their hunter put up more resistance, but we managed to disable its ship. Good work, Max acknowledged. Now we need to transport these two back to base before the stasis field collapses. Tetrax, your ship has containment capabilities, correct? The Petrosapien nodded. Designed specifically for high-risk prisoners. I can have it here in 2 minutes. As Tetrax called for his vessel, Ben studied Albedo more closely. Even transformed into a Tetraman, there was something oddly familiar about him, a mannerism or expression that tickled at Ben's memory. I feel like I've seen him before, he murmured to Gwen. Not just in Onimo's photos. Maybe he's been watching us. Gwen suggested. If he's had the Omnitrix for 2 years and knew about its connection to Grandpa Max, he might have been keeping tabs on the family. The theory made sense, but Ben couldn't shake the feeling that the connection was more direct somehow. Tetrax's ship arrived moments later, descending through the stasis field with specialized shielding that allowed it to maintain full functionality. Its cargo bay opened, revealing a chamber lined with energy suppression technology. We need to move quickly, Tetrax advised. The stasis field is already beginning to fluctuate. Indeed, Ben could see subtle shifts in the frozen tableau around them, minute movements that suggested the effect was weakening. With careful coordination, they maneuvered the immobilized Albedo and Hunter into the containment chamber, securing them with additional restraints as a precaution. The Omnitrix, Max reminded them, pointing to the device on Albedo's chest. We need to prevent him from using it if he breaks free. Ben examined the symbol, recalling what he'd learned about its function. There should be a manual override, a specific sequence of commands that puts it in hibernation mode. You sure about that? Kevin asked skeptically. Reasonably, Ben replied, carefully reaching for the device. With precise movements, he manipulated the dial and interface, inputting a sequence he'd memorized from Max's files. The Omnitrix symbol flickered, then dimmed to a duller green, indicating reduced power. That should prevent immediate transformation if the stasis field fails, Ben explained, stepping back. At least temporarily. With both captives secured, they boarded Tetrax's ship for the short flight back to the plumber base. The Rust Bucket would follow with the rest of the team, coordinating with emergency services to manage the aftermath of the battle. As the ship lifted off, Ben stared down at the frozen scene below, the devastation wrought by just one of Vilgax's hunter teams in a matter of hours. If this was merely the advance force, what would happen when the warlord himself arrived? We got lucky, Gwen said quietly, following his gaze. If Albedo hadn't engaged the hunter directly. It wasn't luck, Ben replied. It was preparation and adaptability. And we're going to need a lot more of both when Vilgax shows up. The ship accelerated toward the plumber base, carrying what they hoped would be the key to Earth's defense, the Omnitrix and its mysterious wielder, both now in their custody. But as Ben watched the subtle pulse of the device even in its dampened state, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing crucial pieces of the puzzle. Who was Albedo really? Why had he stolen the Omnitrix from Onimo? And most importantly, would he prove to be an ally against Vilgax, or yet another enemy they would have to overcome? The plumber base hummed with activity as multiple teams returned from their missions, bringing reports, captured technology, and in Tetrax's case, 2 high-value prisoners still partially affected by the dissipating stasis field. The containment chamber had been prepared in advance, a reinforced cell with energy-dampening fields and multiple redundant security measures. As the stasis effect continued to weaken, both Albedo and the hunter were showing increasing signs of mobility, their movements gradually accelerating from glacial to merely sluggish. The field will collapse completely within minutes, Tetrax warned as they secured the final containment protocols. Both subjects will return to full functionality simultaneously. Let's make sure we're ready when they do, Max replied, checking the observation room security measures. Ben, Gwen, I want you both in here with me. Kevin, stay by the door as backup. Everyone else, maintain perimeter security. Through the transparent barrier, they watched as Albedo, still in Tetraman form, began to move his massive arms with increasing fluidity. The hunter likewise showed signs of recovery, its compound eyes swiveling to assess its new surroundings. Energy dampening field is at maximum, reported Xylene from the control panel. It should prevent the Omnitrix from receiving sufficient power for transformation once the stasis effect ends. Should? Kevin echoed skeptically. The Omnitrix is unlike any other technology we've encountered, Xylene explained. Its power source operates on principles we don't fully understand. We can inhibit it, but complete neutralization is beyond our current capabilities. As if on cue, the stasis field collapsed entirely. Both captives jerked into full motion, the hunter immediately launching itself at the containment barrier while Albedo stumbled backward, disoriented by the sudden transition. Where, the Tetraman began, then focused on the observers. Ah! Plumbers. How, predictable. The hunter chittered angrily, testing different sections of the containment field with its clawed appendages. Finding no weakness, it turned its compound eyes toward Albedo. The Omnitrix wielder is mine by right of hunt. Release us to conclude our combat. Neither of you is going anywhere, Max stated firmly. Not until we get answers. Albedo turned his forearmed attention to the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, which remained dimmed from Ben's override. He touched it experimentally, frowning when it failed to respond. A containment field calibrated to the Omnitrix's energy frequency, he observed, looking up at Ben with sudden interest. Impressive for a primitive facility. You must be Benjamin Tennyson. The use of his full name caught Ben off guard. How do you know who I am? A strange smile crossed Albedo's alien features. I know a great deal about you, Benjamin. More than you might expect. He tapped the Omnitrix symbol again. Though I admit, your ability to implement a hibernation protocol is surprising. Perhaps Asmatha's files on your family were more comprehensive than I realized. Asmath? Max repeated sharply. You know Asmath? The name clearly held significance, though Ben had never heard it before. The creator of this device, Albedo confirmed, gesturing to the Omnitrix. A brilliant mind, if somewhat limited by his moral constraints. He studied their reactions. I see he never contacted you, despite the Omnitrix being intended for Max Tennyson originally. This revelation caused a stir among the observers. Max himself looked stunned. The Omnitrix was meant for me, he asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Indeed, Albedo replied. Though in many realities, it found its way to young Benjamin instead, creating quite the multiversal anomaly. He looked directly at Ben again. In fact, you're something of an aberration in this timeline, a Benjamin Tennyson who never received the Omnitrix. Quite fascinating from a scientific perspective. Ben felt a chill at how closely this echoed what Ian had told him. You're from another reality? Not exactly, Albedo replied. Though I have studied the multiverse extensively. My interest in you stems from a more personal connection. Before he could elaborate, the hunter suddenly slammed against the containment field with renewed force. Enough talk. Vilgax approaches. The Omnitrix must be secured. This caught everyone's attention. Vilgax is already here. Max demanded. The hunter chittered what might have been laughter. 3 orbital cycles away. The advance teams were merely to assess defenses and locate the Omnitrix. It gestured to Albedo. Which we have now done. Thanks to your incompetence, Albedo remarked dryly. I detected your ship's approach vector hours before you landed. Hardly the stealth operation Vilgax likely intended. The hunter hissed angrily but did not contradict him. Max turned to the assembled team. If Vilgax is only 3 days out, we need to accelerate our preparations. Xylene, contact Plumber High Command. Tetrax, we'll need your ship's long-range sensors recalibrated to detect Vilgax's vessel. As the team dispersed to their urgent tasks, Ben returned his attention to Albedo, who was watching the proceedings with detached interest. You still haven't explained who you are, Ben pressed. Or why you stole the Omnitrix from Onimo. Albedo scoffed. That deranged human was using the most sophisticated device in the universe for crude genetic experiments on local fauna. He understood perhaps 1% of its true capabilities. The red Tetraman crossed 2 sets of arms. As for who I am. I was Asmatha's assistant, tasked with recovering the Omnitrix after it was lost during transport to Earth. And instead of returning it, you kept it for yourself, Gwen surmised. A simplification, but essentially correct, Albedo admitted without shame. I recognized its potential beyond Asmatha's limited vision. The Omnitrix is not merely a tool for transformation, it's the key to genetic perfection across all species. Which explains why Vilgax wants it so badly, Max noted grimly. With that kind of power, he could create unstoppable armies. A crude application, but yes, Albedo agreed. Though my interests are more scientific than militaristic. Ben studied the transformed alien carefully. You still haven't explained why you know so much about me specifically. If the Omnitrix was meant for Grandpa Max, why focus on me? Something shifted in Albedo's expression, a calculating look that suggested he was deciding how much to reveal. Finally, He touched the Omnitrix symbol again, this time in a different pattern than before. To everyone's surprise, the dampening field failed to prevent the response. Green light enveloped Albedo's Tetraman form, and when it faded, he had transformed, not back to his white-haired human appearance, but into something that caused gasps throughout the observation room. He had transformed into Ben Tennyson. Not an exact copy, his hair was white instead of brown, his eyes red instead of green, and his clothes inverted in color from Ben's usual outfit. But the face, the build, the features, they were unmistakably Ben's. Does this answer your question? Albedo asked, using Ben's voice with a slightly different inflection. Ben stared in shock. You look like me. How is that possible? The Omnitrix uses the DNA of its wielder as a default reference point, Albedo explained. When I activated it for the first time, it recalibrated my genetic structure to match the most compatible human DNA pattern in its database, yours. But why would my DNA be in the Omnitrix if I never wore it? Ben asked, struggling to make sense of the revelation. Because in most realities, you did wear it, Albedo replied. The Omnitrix exists partially outside conventional spacetime. It contains data from multiple timeline variations, including the dominant one where Ben Tennyson becomes its wielder. Max approached the containment barrier, studying Albedo with new intensity. You bypassed our dampening field. What else are you capable of? Albedo smiled, a disturbing sight on what was essentially Ben's face. I've had 2 years to master this device, Maxwell Tennyson. I've unlocked something went wrong. With this response, please try again. Bring the next chapter. Continue the tale by writing the next chapter. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.